last month too.
All righty, sir. Floor is yours.
Okay, kicking off here. I know, as Michelle said, we had a couple late emails coming in. I think Manny and Michael are both going to be a bit late today. So I'll track to see if they're coming in as we go. To start off at the top of our list, wondering, is Antonio here today?
I am.
Yes, see him there. All right. Lucia?
Present.
All right. Alicia? I don't see an Alicia right now. Brian?
I'm here.
Great. Jake?
Here.
Alan?
Good afternoon.
Hello. And Michael's going to be a little late. Paul, I know you're here. And Ray, you asked me if I'm here, so you're definitely here. Joe? I don't see Joe. Jamie?
Here.
Aileen?
Here.
Kurt? Christopher Pacheco?
Here.
All right. Julie?
I'm here, thank you.
Hey. Tanger?
Here.
And Manuel?
I think Manny's going to be a little late.
Oh, Manny was the other one who was going to be a little late. Sorry about that. Yep. Okay, great. I will keep track, see if these folks roll in over time. With that, let me go ahead and quickly send out a link here in case any of you did not get to see this, but where'd this go? Meetings 2022. Sent out a little bit about a week ago. Michelle sent out our minutes from last month. Did not see in the last week any interim updates, suggestions for edits, etc. So we'll briefly share a link to these in case folks want to review more closely. But let me get this host and panelists out. There's a Drive link if you'd like to review. We'll need to take a quick vote on ayes and nays to approve the minutes from last month that we sent out a week ago. I'm not sure from process orientation, do we need to put forward a motion and get a seconded motion in order to do that? Or can I just call for a roll call?
Well, technically you're supposed to do a motion, but.
Okay, I'll put forward a motion to approve the minutes from February 14th, 2022.
Second that.
Okay, I'll run it by ayes and nays. Could I get ayes?
Aye.
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 Any nays? No. All right. Minutes approved. Loaded up to our Drive for share. Michelle will send them out. I'll post them publicly on the website as well after this, so the public can see them. Thanks for that. And I think that's the end of the start here, unless we have, do we have any new members or anyone else to introduce as we did last month?
No. No, we're good. Okay. So now we're going to move into public comment. We have a full slate of people that want to join us this evening. And I am going to start with Ben Gelman. Ben, I'm going to move you over. You have 3 minutes. There you are, Ben. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can folks hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks for holding this public comment today, everyone. Here today to talk about ongoing protected bike lane maintenance from city bikeways. Speaking specifically here, my personal experience with the protected bike lane along West 13th Avenue in the La Alma Lincoln Park neighborhood. I called in on right around 5 p.m. on February the 15th and received 311 case number 6557030 regarding blocks of ice basically that had compacted over time due to ongoing snow and had rendered the protected bike lane going in the eastbound direction on West 13th Avenue completely unusable for anyone without, special equipment like studded tires or something of that nature. 2 weeks went by. I live in the North Capitol Hill neighborhood in District 10 and commute to the Federal Boulevard corridor in District 3. 2 weeks went by and the only work that I could tell had been done in that section was a temporary closure of the bikeway with signs that must have been installed by a city crew. That being said, I called back into 311 and was told that there was no update from their end. Today, still March 14th, almost a full month after that initial 311 call and 2 weeks after calling back to check on it, there's still been no action in that area. And so that leads me to feel, as though there's a disconnect between the project delivery and operations side of Denver DOTI. Project delivery plans, designs, and builds, the quality, high comfort, safe bike lane along the West 13th Avenue corridor. But then that lane is dangerous and effectively unusable for weeks at a time due to a lack of routine snow and ice clearance from DOTI operations. I appreciate the work that the operations teams do, especially during snow season. There's a lot of work to clear up, even just the basic routes for general traffic. But it seems that there needs to be a better, more systematic process for maintaining the protected bike lanes that have been installed by the city, especially during the winter months when you can predict that there's going to be snow and ice accumulation, especially on the south side of east-west streets, the eastbound direction, due to consistent shading from buildings directly to the south of those. So
Ben, that's 3 minutes.
Excellent.
So I'll let you give it a couple more seconds.
Nope, that's all I had. So thanks for holding this comment today, I think.
Ben, appreciate the comments. I'll bring it up with Councilwoman Torres, my next meeting with her.
Okay, our next guest is Shannon Hoffman. Shannon, I'll promote you to the panel. Shannon, I think you're with us.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, my name is Shannon Hoffman. I live in District 10. I live near 12th and Pearl. So I attended the meeting last month where we heard about the right-of-way policy and that there are permits needed for fencing that goes on the right-of-way, that it should be easily removable, that it's not permanent, and that also that people cannot receive a permit to block anyone from camping in those spaces, that again, it has to be a temporary fence. So I wanted to engage in this dialogue because I walk daily to Cheeseman Park, and it really bothers me both visually to see all this fencing, but also sometimes the fencing is down across the sidewalk. It makes it hard to walk across. Sometimes there's fencing that's like as tall as me with metal stakes that poke out. So I reported 2 fences to 311 that I know have been up for at least 6 months or more. So already in violation of the need for them to be temporary. And they were immediately closed by 311 and said that I didn't give a specific address. I gave pictures and I gave an intersection of where they're located. The other thing is that this fencing often goes across or along an entire street or block. So there's not necessarily an exact address for it. So I'm concerned about saying that the fencing can't be used to prevent camping, but it appears to be that's what's happening in actuality. And the reason I'm concerned about that is because I think that there may be a liability that the city is putting itself into, that it could be opening itself up to a lawsuit violation. Like I said, I live at 12th and Pearl. There was an apartment building that essentially like conducted their own sweep. They put up their own signs and said that the people that were camping there had to move, and the next day removed them and then put up the orange fencing. And additionally, I've seen a document from a community organization that is encouraging people to put up fencing if they don't like people camping in these spaces. So, you know, this is a complex interlocking issue that a lot of us are trying to work on. And we want you to know that we want to work with you, because I'm not sure if there's an issue around having enough folks to provide enforcement or enough funding around this in terms of these reports to 311 about these right-of-way violations. But it's a huge concern in our neighborhood. And so, you know, I just want to voice that concern here, but also say that like I'm a very engaged citizen who's ready and willing to work with anyone on this board or in this department about this. So thank you very much.
Great timing. Thanks, Shannon. Okay, our next speaker is Anna Cornelius. Anna, I will promote you to the panel. Anna, are you with us? There you are.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Anna Cornelius, and I also live in District 10. I live on Washington Street between 10th and 11th. And I'm also here to talk to you about the public right-of-way encumbrances in my neighborhood. Everywhere I walk in Cap Hill is pretty much covered in fencing in the public right-of-way. I've complained twice about two areas with fencing. Also, like Shannon stated earlier, that have been there more than 6 months. I called 311 with really no acceptable response or action given back to me. Not only am I prohibited from use of this space, but I have safety concerns as well. I drive a Subaru Impreza, which is pretty low to the ground, and I'm not able to see around corners at intersections because of the metal fencing. And when I park, my passengers, which are usually my kids or my grandkids, they have trouble getting out because they can't open the passenger door to get out and have to actually climb through, and then they have to get out in traffic. So I watched the Channel 9 story by Kyle Clark around the fencing being illegal. And I also watched this board meeting last month where it was stated that, you know, the parameters around that, that it has to be temporary, that it expires in 3 months, and that it cannot be used to prohibit encampments. And a neighbor of mine had told me that they went out to try and remove some of that fencing in our neighborhood, and they were confronted by someone who came out and told them that they were destroying their private property and was going to call the police, and was very confrontational. And I checked next door shortly after that and saw the comments of people taking matters into their own hands and sort of like vigilante type of actions. And I'm really concerned about that because one way or another, the city is going to be forced to deal with this. And what I'm really asking is that DOTI be accountable and responsible for the tasks that their department has been assigned to manage and remove the public right-of-way fencing and fine repeat offenders. Not taking action is taking an action that will fester and explode in our city. And I'm asking that you both be responsible and response-able. And I also love my community, and I am happy to help and facilitate in whatever way I can so that we can all use our public space in a safe way. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Our next speaker is Kimberly Morse. I will promote you to the panel. Kimberly, let us know when you join. Kimberly, are you with us?
I am. I just had to unmute myself. Okay. Hi. I'm here to echo the comments of the prior speakers. My name is Kim Morse. I'm also a District 10 resident, and I'd like to present this to you as a visionary exercise. So I invite you to take a moment and envision a beautiful spring evening as we're approaching that season. You step out of your house for an after dinner walk to soak in the warm temperatures and the sights and smells of the flowers and trees starting to awaken and grow. When you step outside, instead of enjoying the peace and beauty of nature in your urban landscape, you find the entire area fenced off from any sort of life. Welcome to Capitol Hell. All my neighborhood is surrounded by orange, green, and metal fencing that is shoulder high for me, an adult, a grown adult. Just imagine for a moment if you are walking your child, or maybe you're with somebody who has a disability and is in a wheelchair and trying to navigate our city sidewalks sandwiched between fencing that surrounds the entire tree lawn and the hardscape of homes and buildings. Would you feel safe? Would you feel happy or at peace? Maybe some of you don't care so much about the human experience, so let's talk about driver safety, as Anna talked about. Residents who drive average size sedans find their visibility impaired in Cap Hill as it is because of the dense bank of parked cars at every intersection. Now add 2 layers of fencing. Remember, this is wrapped around the entire tree lawn. And how well do you think you can see whether or not another car is coming and whether it's safe to proceed through the intersection? We have lived like this for months. I've asked many times, how long is this going to last? What's the end game? I've gotten no answers. Like the prior speakers, I'm somebody who moves about this city on foot. And I'm telling you, this is a terrible experience. So I'll ask you all, how long do you anticipate we have to endure this hostile infrastructure? The tree lawn is public space. It's true, home residents are to take care of the trees and the lawn and that landscaping, but it's public space and they're taking it away from all the other residents, and it is a safety issue. There are some parts in Cap Hill where the fencing is taller than me. There is a space in on Park Avenue where it's above my head. If it were nighttime and I were trying to get away from somebody who might be trying to come after me, where would I go? Because I'd be trapped in. There is a lot that is wrong with this, and I'm asking you to return the public space to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, our next speaker is Harmony. Harmony, I will promote you to the panel. Let us know when you join.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm at school pickup, so there's a little bit of noise here. Thank you to the speakers before me. Yeah, I am not here to speak on that tonight, but I will say that it is embarrassing as we drive through our city. I was with some people from Florida today, and they were shocked at the rocks, the preventative landscaping, and the orange fencing that doesn't do anything to help the problem at hand. But that is not why I am here today. I'm here today to talk to you about community air monitoring. 2 years ago, the Suncor refinery in Commerce City was fined for their continued violations. As part of these violations, Cultivando was awarded money to do community air monitoring in Commerce City and North Denver. This is very exciting and our first steps towards environmental justice in neighborhoods who've experienced so much harm for decades. As part of the community air monitoring program, they have this great 10 by 12 foot trailer that they want to take out to different locations around North Denver every 2 weeks to conduct different air monitoring points. My location, I have a community space in Elyria, one of the most underserved and polluted communities in the country. We were excited to bring the trailer to our location, which would partially block off the sidewalk for 2 weeks. Let's keep in mind that this sidewalk, both sidewalks and the street have been recently closed down for months with the Kiewit I-70 expansion project that many in the neighborhood do not want. Many residents are excited for this air quality monitoring program. And because these communities have been underserved, primarily communities of color, they are often decades behind in the education and information about environmental injustices and pollution that most impact them. So this is very, very exciting. That said, when we applied for a right-of-way permit to partially block one of the sidewalks, we were told that it was going to cost us $750 from DOTI for these 2 weeks. I'm asking you, the DOTI board, to please help waive these fees so that we can find locations throughout the city for the next year to do this air monitoring. This is just the right thing to do, and we need all the money that we can to provide education, translation, and to do more air monitoring analysis, not to pay the city of Denver for a right-of-way fee. And I'm curious how much Kiewit paid for the months and months that they shut down this entire area, greatly disrupting the community, which is still disrupted today from Kiewit's expansion, and who knows how long this is going to go on. They shut down our gas, they shut down our water access. I am asking you to waive the fee for a partial closure of sidewalks, and I want this to set a precedence to work with Cultivando and their air monitoring team so that we can find more locations that accommodate them to gather this much needed information for the community. Please do anything that you can to help this, as it's a step in the right direction, and at times where Denver has experienced some of the worst air quality in the world. And as I stand on this playground, and for me, when my kids are fortunate enough to go to school at Brown in a rich white middle class neighborhood, and the air quality that my kids breathe is significantly different than the air quality breathed by the kids in GES. And that's environmental injustice, and we need to do everything that we can to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Harmony. Our last speaker public speaker of the afternoon is Katie Blakey. Katie, I will promote you to the panel. Let us know when you join.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, thank you so much. Sorry for not being on camera. I tried to do it with the picture in the background, but my head was too big. So I just went with the picture. My name is Katie Blakey. I live in District 10 around 11th and Sherman. Thanks y'all so much for having this comment period and for your service to the city. You all do such cool work. So I signed up, as you can probably tell, to give comment about this specific intersection. This is the northwest side of 12th and Sherman. You can kind of see the Capitol in the background there. This fence has been up for several months. The metal fence is about 6 feet tall, and the orange fencing around it is 4 feet tall. It's wrapped around that stop sign next to it. And the area that's fenced off is roughly 16 by 125 feet. So it's like basically half a block. It is a huge hazard from a visibility standpoint because of just how tall the fencing is and because it's a double layer. And since it extends all the way up to the stop sign, it's really hard to see, especially because of the street parking that's up and down 12th. So if you're driving on Sherman trying to cross 12th, you have to pull up past the fencing, which puts you in line with the sidewalk, which I always hate doing. And we also have tons of people on bikes and scooters. So it's just kind of dangerous all the time. And you can kind of see in the far end of the picture, there's a construction trailer on the other side of the parking lot you can see in there. So it's already a super busy, chaotic area that's not in line with normal traffic patterns. But like the scariest part of this intersection is that it is right down the street from the church nightclub. If you're familiar with it, it's very dark. There are tons and tons of cars moving. There are a ton of pedestrians who will just randomly cross the street. A lot of times they are super drunk. So it's like scary on a good night. But now that we have all this extra fencing, it's another layer of complexity, especially with folks like trying to park, Lyft drivers dropping people off, and then people trying to get into that parking lot you can see on the side there. Like, it's so bad. I don't go to that intersection either driving or walking on Friday or Saturday nights, just because especially so many pedestrians have gotten hit in Capitol Hill in the last year. So I would really appreciate it if you all could look at this, maybe send someone from right-of-way enforcement to investigate it. And of course, happy to help you all in any way I can. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Katie. I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Raymond.
All right. Thank you, everybody who spoke. The public comments, greatly appreciate it. Love hearing it. And let's see. Our next meeting on the agenda is the report from the Dodi Leadership.
Thank you, Raymond. I will take that real quick here. Adam is not able to join us today, but I would actually just like to segue us into our next item, which will feature a report. This is one of the more pressing things outside of our mobility functions into our utility functions, and are joined here today by our Deputy Manager for Utilities, which oversees solid waste and our wastewater, our storm and sewer, as well as Jessica Lawley from the Utilities Analytics team. She heads that up. So I think probably in the interest of time, I'll hand it over to Ms. Medellin, and if you want to maybe give a high-level overview, and then we can dive into our presentation on this important topic.
Thank you, Nick, and good afternoon, board. It's nice to see everyone. Again, I'm Margaret, and I'm a deputy manager here at DOTI, overseeing wastewater and solid waste. And we're excited to present to you today a proposal that we're preparing for an ordinance for council. And this is one that has been in the works, and Jessica's going to go through a quick presentation. But this has really been in the works since about the 90s. And this is looking at how we can align our values and our fees. As you know, right now, if you want to participate in compost, that's an additional fee. Where trash service is really, you do not get a direct fee for trash. So we are looking at a program, and it has been known as pay as you throw. And that may be how you've heard it in the past. We're now trying to use a different term, and I believe it's volume-based pricing. So we're excited about this proposal. We think that this is really going to help us to partner with our community and increase diversion rates here in Denver, and really help us use our compost system, use our recycle system, and really minimize the use of our landfill. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica Lawley, who does head up our Office of Strategic Analytics here, and she is a project manager for this project.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I am going to share my screen, and then I believe while I'm presenting, I won't be able to see anyone, so we'll definitely save some time for questions at the end, or you can just, yell at me and I'll answer your questions. So, okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes. Got it.
Yep.
All right, and not the one with my notes, right? Okay.
Right.
Great. So hi, like Margaret said, my name is Jessica Lawley, and I am the project manager for volume-based trash pricing, formerly known as Pay As You Throw. And this is a joint effort between the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency and DOTI. So why are we here today? The main reason is that Denver's waste diversion is significantly lower than comparable cities. By waste diversion, I'm referring to the amount of our waste that is recycled and composted. So Denver is at a 26% diversion rate compared to the national average of 34%. Also, all of the cities that you see on this screen are use volume-based fee systems, which is what we're here to discuss today. And how did this happen? How did we get to 26%, or why are we still here? Currently, the cost of most of solid waste services remains supported by the city's general fund. So trash, recycle, large item collections are provided at no direct charge to the customers and are instead funded primarily by other city revenue sources. So as a result, there's no connection for people on how much trash they generate and how much they pay, and therefore no incentive to recycle more and landfill less. And like Margaret mentioned, the compost service is currently optional and fee-based. And so there's actually a disincentive for residents to do the right thing. And only 30,000 customers participate today. So considering that information, let's discuss how we can change the way we invest in our solid waste infrastructure, because currently our waste fees don't match our values. Right now, without any incentives for waste reduction and diversion, we're actually investing heavily in our trash. Keep in mind too, the tonnage doesn't really change. So either food waste is being composted and turned into a valuable end product, or it's being thrown into the trash to emit methane from the landfill. So the concept of volume-based trash pricing financially incentivizes residents to reduce their trash and compost and recycle more, allowing Denver to increase its diversion rate and align our services with our values. And this conversation has been happening for a really long time. So we've done all that we can do to increase our recycling and encourage our customers to compost through education and outreach. Over all these years, the one solution that keeps coming up is moving to a fee-based system. Recycling was introduced back in the 1990s, and now 96% of our customers have recycling carts, which is great. And we started offering compost over 10 years ago. That has proved to be pretty popular. As I mentioned, there are 30,000 composters, which is about 16% of all of our customers. Not much has changed in the last 10 years, though. A number of our resident-led advisory councils have all recommended that we move to a fee-based system to reduce food waste, increase recycling, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we've seen it work in so many other cities, like that first slide that I showed to all of you, where all of those cities leading the way have volume-based systems. So in summary, why volume-based pricing? Why is this our strategy? For one, like I mentioned, Denver's recycling and composting rate is super low, 26%, below that national average, and it's only increased 1 or 2% over the last 20 years for every year. So also being that our compost program is optional and fee-based, that is also another big barrier to diversion. But compost is where the weight is. What we know is that 50% of the material that residents put into their trash carts is actually compostable. So all the grass and the food waste, and adding compost service to another 150,000 homes will bring Denver well above the national average. Secondly, our customers want weekly recycling, and we want to meet this need. But to provide that service, we either need to charge for it or take more money from the general fund, which reduces the amount of funding available for other important services and programs that serve all residents and businesses, not just our customers. As a reminder, solid waste only services single-family homes and apartments with 7 or less units. So that's about 60% of the city. And that's 180,000 customers. And third, just like many other sectors of the economy, the cost of trash service is going up. Trucks, equipment, gas, labor, all of those costs are going up. So whether we move to a fee-based service or not, Denver residents are going to pay more through the city's budget for this essential service. It is reasonable that the customers receiving this service should pay for it rather than charging all residents and visitors and businesses in the city, including those who have to pay for a private hauler for their trash service. So here are the items that we're proposing with this ordinance. An amendment to remove the compost service fee and replace it with this new volume-based fee structure. It'll establish that the revenue from this program will only be used to support the program. So setting up a special revenue fund for solid waste management. Would allow DOTI to create an affordability program in the form of an instant rebate, which I'm definitely going to get into. And it also adds language regarding compliance, so liens for non-payment and contamination fees. And so what does this actually look like? What is volume-based pricing, and how does this look from a resident's point of view? So as you can see here, the largest cart costs the most per month, and the smallest trash cart costs the least. Recycle and compost carts are included at no additional cost, and you can have whatever size of those you want. The fee is solely based on the size of the trash cart. And so that price is really incentivizing waste diversion. The more you use your recycle and compost cart, the smaller trash cart you can have and the smaller monthly fee. And so this cost of service fee really includes everything that solid waste management does for us today, including the two new things, which I did mention or should mention, is that weekly recycling will be a part of this proposal, moving from bi-weekly to weekly, and then also compost for all customers. So expanding to the rest of the 150,000 homes that don't participate today. And then I'd love to read every single thing on this slide, but there's a lot that goes into providing those collection services, trucks, drivers, education, a billing system, special programs. But I don't have time for that. And so, oops. Yep, next slide. So we talked about the fee. The second piece of the ordinance is the affordability program. And that'll be in the form of an instant rebate in partnership with Denver Human Services. And so this rebate will be based on the income and number of people in a household. Applications will be available prior to billing go live so that we can make sure that the first invoice that residents receive actually reflects the amount that they're able to pay. And when you're comparing our rates to other surrounding cities, it's actually, what we're proposing is much lower. Remember, it was 9, 13, and 21 for each size cart. This table shows the actual cost that people pay in surrounding cities when they have to hire their own trash company or private hauler. And only a few other municipalities actually offer compost service. Also, very important to note, no other cities or haulers in the country offer a discount program for low-income households like this. And the last piece is the compliance part. So DOTI will have the ability to lien for non-payment, very consistent with our storm drainage and sanitary sewer requirements, since solid waste services are considered a utility. And then also we'll have the ability to fine for contamination, but super important to note that we will not be enforcing contamination fees at go live. We want to make sure that residents understand how to use their recycling compost carts correctly and understand what this new program is. And so that will not be something that we use at first. We'll definitely be relying on education outreach. So at a high level, our timeline is that we're looking for a council vote in April, May with a go live in October. And important for this group to know that the Policy Review Committee actually approved this proposal on January 28th and gave us their blessing to move forward with the draft ordinance. And we're wrapping up our outreach phase right now with the Climate Office. So we've presented to over 35 organizations with at least one in every council district, spoken directly with over 700 residents, reached thousands more through various RNO and community-based newsletters and media. Our outreach has definitely focused on engagement with people of color, low-income households, multi-generational households, renters, older adults, youth. And we have more meetings coming up, and we're available to schedule more where there's interest. And I can go into talk about some of the outcomes from that outreach, but I really want to give you guys some time to ask questions, and I'm sure there are some. So thank you so much. Do you guys want me to call on people?
Please, yes.
Sorry?
Sorry, yeah, I would say go ahead and grab folks. Yeah, at your leisure.
Okay, Eileen, I saw you first.
Thanks. I am really supportive of this policy. But just to be sure that I understand what all the constructive or negative feedback you may have received, to clear up any blind spots that I may have, what are some of the more consistent constructive comments that you've received, or concerns that neighbors and residents may have addressed with this policy?
I think that the top concern that we have is that this service is already 100% paid for through property taxes. We hear that in every single meeting, and so that's definitely the most consistent concern. And then we go on to explain a little bit more in depth about how the general fund actually works and who's paying into it and what the service actually costs. So that's been the big one. Our website has an FAQ on it that addresses that question, and I'll drop that in the chat here actually, so that you guys, if you're ever sharing this information, can pass that along. Okay, Jonathan.
I'm sorry, I get myself unmuted. I have probably like 3 or 4 questions, but I'll just ask one and pass to others. Am wondering that you just mentioned the general fund here. I presume this current free trash and recycling service is supported by the general fund. If that's the case, how will those funds from the general fund be redirected if this ordinance passes? Is it they're just returned to the general fund for use, or do we have something in mind for them?
That's also a hot question. What we do know is that the affordability program will actually be funded by the general fund. And so until we know how many people sign up for that program and how much money that's going to be, we won't know how much is, quote unquote, freed up in the general fund. What, you had other questions, I think, or did that answer?
All right, we can pass to others. I do have more, but it's not fair for me to take them all.
Okay, we'll rotate. Joe.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that nice presentation. I just had a question. You're saying it's volume, but you're going to just charge by the trash cart, the size of the trash can, right? Because you're not going to measure it. So for people who have a varying degree, I guess you have to get the largest one because you don't want your garbage stinking up everybody else. Have you thought about that? Because mine obviously varies quite a bit. People out of town travel quite a bit, but I guess you're just going to say whatever your maximum is, you're going to pay for Eastern Sunday. As so we use the term in architecture. That means you build the church for Easter, but the rest of the time you don't need it. Is there any kind of thought toward that?
So Joe, help me understand. Do you have a compost cart at your house?
Yes.
And so we're thinking that as we start to deliver compost carts to residents, we don't want them to downsize their carts immediately, their trash carts. We want them to see how starting to compost really decreases the amount of trash that they have, and definitely keep whatever trash cart is appropriate for the amount of trash that they have at their homes. We certainly don't want trash overflowing, but we do think that with compost and then weekly recycling also will help kind of spread out the things that were just mainly being put in the trash, and hopefully nothing is overflowing into the streets.
No, I get that. I'm just saying it varies quite a bit. So you have to get a little larger because, things happen and you don't want that garbage just kind of sitting around, even if it is in a black plastic bag. Yeah.
Whatever works for your home too, residents will have the ability to select whatever trash cart they.
No, I get it. Just, I'm paying an extra $10 some months and not, that's all. That's not me. That's not my problem, but you have that issue. And then I think, yeah, a lot of people, I mean, you have to really do a good job of convincing. We pay a lot of money in property taxes, and it's always been that. And now there's another fee, and wastewater sort of did the same thing, and they started charging more and all that. So it's a ongoing thing that what's the next one. So just this is for the good and all that, just to sell it that way. And of course, more people will compost. I guarantee it if that is now a free service. Yes, because I've talked to several neighbors and I haven't quite gotten into that yet. And I think the same thing, if you even had more things for the hazardous materials to go into special days like that, which you do have somewhat, that would help too. And people would do more than just kind of, I'll just put my battery in the garbage can and nobody will know the difference. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Tangier, is that how you pronounce it? Sorry.
Tangier, yes. Thank you, Jessica and Margaret. I'm so happy that this is finally happening. I heard that there is funding for community-based organizations, like after this passes, to do education and outreach. Is that the case?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, is that the
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine. That was it. Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. And that'll be kind of like our next step after this ordinance passes. Then we're straight into the implementation phase and heavy education and outreach, and definitely need some assistance from our community-based organizations. So if you have some ideas around that, we are beginning to look into what organizations those are, and you can definitely reach out to me. I'll pop my email in the chat too, and we can touch base on that.
Great. Thank you. I was also going to make, I think in reading about the property tax thing, it feels like, commercial properties and other properties that aren't even benefiting from trash collection are paying. So essentially, single family homes have been subsidized by people who aren't even benefiting from trash collection. So I think it all just makes sense, and it's about time.
That's exactly right. Yep. Jake.
Yeah, Jessica, I do have two equity questions. So if you don't mind me asking too, but I was curious about the enforcement and collections policy. I particularly concerned about whether or not this would cause a lien to ever be placed against a property. I just really wouldn't want this to be one more reason that someone potentially loses their home and ends up out on the street, because Lord knows that's not something we need to add to.
Right.
So I was curious about how that's factored in, and if people would be protected, particularly low-income individuals. I know we've got this rebate and subsidized thing, but I wouldn't, even want someone to fall through the cracks there and end up in a really bad situation. And then I can ask my second question now, or I don't know if you want me to wait.
Well, let me get at that one first.
Yeah, okay.
So we definitely do not intend on leaning anyone. So with that, it's going to be modeled after our storm drainage billing system. And so I don't know if you know this, but the storm side of things actually has like a 96% payment rate or success rate. They don't actually lien anyone with the amount of points of communication, letters and contact made to the property owner. They don't really end up liening many people at all. And similar to the contamination fees, like this program, we want to make sure people understand how to use these cards correctly, and especially don't want to be liening them or fining them with the new program. So.
And Jessica, though, but ultimately we get to the end of the line with someone, this would be treated similarly to other utility bills where there could potentially be a lien put on a house. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to go then sell it the next day at the bank. DOTI doesn't do that. Let's be very clear on there. But this is a tool they use for collection, so that when the house is sold or something along the lines, then the city is made whole on those fees. But no, I do not anticipate anyone losing their house because they have not paid their trash bill.
Mhm.
And the lien is, as Jessica just said, that is a very last resort for someone who is not paying. And there is a lot of work and legwork and options done before we get to that option. That's just the final option.
The current threshold is like $200 in 90 days past due. So our fees are pretty low, much lower than storm drainage. So the amount of time that it would take for someone to actually get to that point is a lot.
That's helpful. Yeah, the only thing I'd add there is it might be worth considering, like, how do we get people who potentially aren't paying that might be fee income reduced eligible? Like, how do we think about how to protect those people? It's very hard to be poor in this country, and it takes a lot of time. So I don't know if there's any way we can expose additional resources to people who might be at risk, but just a thought. And then my other question from an equity perspective is, obviously a large percentage of our city's residents, I couldn't find data. I went looking, but I couldn't find any. But I believe that a large percentage of our city residents are multifamily, and they are also paying into the general fund. They're paying property taxes, and they're not getting these benefits from the city. In fact, from best research I could tell, say like a middle-sized housing, say, about 15 units is paying about $62 a month per homeowner or renter, depending on the situation. That's obviously people who are subsidizing single-family home owners, and they are more likely to have lower income than the single-family home owners in the first place. I'm guessing that that's a legislative issue and not necessarily a department thing that can be solved directly within the department. But it does raise a huge equity concern for me, and it plays into it's just one of the many regulations in this city that are tied to 7 or less units in a building that just continue to prey on lower income people in the city, whether it's sidewalk replacement or trash. They kind of all come down to this situation. So I'm just curious if there's any thoughts into how we could either potentially expand to lower income properties that might be at risk, or potentially just residential in general, rather than quite frankly, having a classist qualification for trash pickup in our city, because of effectively that's the design today. And I was wondering if there's any consideration towards that.
So a couple of thoughts on this. So the that single family home at 7 units or less thing is actually a state law that we can't service those multifamily buildings. So we can't compete with private haulers for those customers, those homes. And an important thing that we talk about with this proposal is that, maybe this is the first step. If we can kind of like walk the walk with our program, then maybe, the powers that be can enforce this on a citywide level. I don't know if Nick or someone else might know more about the other proposals out there for citywide recycling and composting service. I know that some things have been
No, but I wanted to go back to a point, and just kind of as a response to Jake's comment there, Jessica, can you talk again about how today effectively under our current form, people in multifamily places are paying the same property tax, whether you pay it directly from a condo or indirectly through your rent, and then they are effectively subsidizing single family homes that receive service. So by doing this, it flips the script, and now the folks that are using the service are paying for the service, and the folks that aren't using it aren't subsidizing those people. Now, does this mean that their property tax or their rent goes down commensurate? I'm going to guess no on that. But it really does kind of flip the script on who is subsidizing whom, because you're exactly right. If we make assumptions that apartment complexes have lower income folks than the single family homes, they're subsidizing single family homes and all of that. So that was the only comment I had.
No, and to be clear, that is my favorite part of this program, is it begins to get us towards that. It gets us closer to the equity. I was just shooting for the stars and hoping maybe there were some opportunities to expand it for additional equity.
There are citywide efforts out there outside of what Doti's trying to do for the rest of those residents. Julie.
Thanks. And I had two questions, but one of them was very similar to what Jake's first question. So I have a comment for that and then a question. So my comment is, I completely believe that the people here now have the intention of not making anyone homeless over this. But I'm wondering if something should be in the ordinance, because as we're all painfully aware, elections matter and things happen. And if I would like to have some sort of protection to say, like, something like every option, including referrals to human services and exception process. I don't want to wordsmith it, but there's always going to be some case where someone's $2 over the limit, the income limit, that they have some extraordinary, maybe situation, like maybe have a family member who's undocumented, can't get Medicaid and had to have a transplant. I just want to make sure that there's leeway to protect those situations that you're never going to address in regulation. And I mean, I'm happy to talk offline about that, but that's just a suggestion. And my question is around the education, and I'm totally ignorant about how this all works. I know about 10 years ago, we tried to do composting, and it was something that we put in the backyard, and my dogs, broke in and had a really big snack, and that was the end of our composting. So I don't know if my dogs are less well behaved than other dogs in Denver, but I don't think so, or that I'm more klutzy than Everett, which is a distinct possibility. But this is a pretty dog friendly city. So has the technology changed? Is it still something that's in a yard? And I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, so it's actually the same thing as your trash, but in a different cart. It's kind of a way that I like to explain it. It's just like there's a black trash cart and a purple recycling cart, there's a green third compost cart. And so the same things that people are putting into their trash that are accepted for compost will just go into that same cart. So we really won't.
So you could empty it from your house on a daily basis, because again, you're the dogs are fenced in the yard, those are outside of the yard.
Yep, and we give residents 3-gallon kitchen pails actually with all of your compost carts. So it's this little pail that you can keep on your countertop as you're chopping up vegetables, sliding in the scraps.
Okay.
We take that out once every 2 days or something. We make it pretty convenient, just trying to get people to adopt the program.
I don't know if it's your department, but I do want to if it is, recently, or every so often, I get a little thing in the mail that says, it has little pictures, this is, that's what looks cool. That says this goes in recycling and this goes in trash. And I find again, as someone who's not super educated about this, but wants to do the right thing, I find that helpful. So if that's you all who are doing it, that's great. Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
So you can do that now, you just pay for it?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Jessica, remind us the fee for compost.
It's $9.75 a month, billed quarterly. So $29.
If I get the smallest trash can, I'll actually be saving 75 cents a month.
That's true, Nick.
What a deal.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Margaret, were you going to say something, or did we cover it?
I think we covered it. I was just going to say, Jessica, maybe talk a little bit about the benefits of a community compost system versus, that system maybe that you have in your backyard. We'll actually take it off site, and the level of treatment we're able to provide, you can actually put things in your compost that you wouldn't in your backyard compost. So I thought you could.
Yeah, I'll go into it more. And that's not to say that we don't encourage backyard composting too. I think it's great, but there are some benefits to the industrial composting process that we use. So we can accept every type of food waste that, meat, dairy, bones, those things you can't put into a backyard compost pile. So it's definitely a lot more room for, waste diversion with this program.
Jessica, I think out of the interest of time for the rest of our agenda, I think we want to thank you for for coming and just being able to share more information on this program. I think a lot of us are excited. Obviously, I think a lot of us have questions too as well, but just want to thank you just for taking the time to just be with us, you too, Margaret, as well. So I think with that, we're about 10 minutes into the time that we have for the Dr. Cog. So I just want to make everyone aware of that. And Jessica, if you don't mind staying with to answer any additional questions.
Antonio, could I make one closing statement here on this?
Yeah.
Thank you. So just as Jessica mentioned, this is going to be coming before the city council here in the next few months. This is a huge policy shift for the city, you know, and I'm not a marketing expert, but you know, I would propose it as Longmont can do it. If Longmont can do it, Denver can do it. But really this is where we start to make our fees better match our values here, and would just ask, you know, please, you know, share your thoughts and feelings with city council. And if you think this is the right track, which we certainly do, please encourage them to vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you guys, Jessica, Nick. You guys are great salespeople. You guys sold me at least.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, with that, like Antonio mentioned, we're about 10 minutes behind schedule. If we can start with the Dr. Cog portion of this meeting with Mr. Ron Pastorf. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right.
Believe you are, and I'll do just a real quick introduction. So Ron joining us from the Denver Regional Council of Governments, better known nationally as Dr. Cog. Everyone knows of Dr. Cog if you've lived in the Council of Governments world. Ron is the Director of Transportation Planning. So his presentation is going to focus more on that aspect of it, which is what we asked. But Dr. Cog also deals with a number of different regional issues, including Area Agency on Aging, looking at regional land use, things like that. But without further ado, I'll introduce Mr. Ron Papsdorf, Director of Transportation Planning at Dr. Cog.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Raymond. Real pleasure to be here. I will do a quick time check. How much time do you have for this topic? I don't want to go over.
I will defer to our chair or Ms. Faust, or I could just pull up the dang agenda that I just
I had 30 minutes on there, but I'll leave it to the two co-chairs.
So you're technically 14 minutes behind.
I'll try to catch us up. I can talk fast.
Thanks, Ron.
As I was saying, glad to be here. I hope many of you have heard of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, or Dr. Cog. As Nick said, we do some important work for the region. I'm going to just do a slide on it, just so everyone has a good grounding in sort of what Dr. Cog is. And I will apologize. There will be a little bit of alphabet soup with this afternoon. But I want to acclimate you to some of the terms that we use, and I'll explain that alphabet soup as much as I can. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and I've got a little presentation to walk through today. Okay. Nick, can I get a high sign from you that you're seeing the slideshow? Great, thank you very much. As I said, really happy to be here and share information about the Denver Regional Council of Governments. I'm going to focus on sort of one of the key functions that we serve, and that is funding transportation projects around the region through the Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as TIP. So what is Dr. Cog anyways? I don't know if how many of you saw the agenda packet and thought, why are we having a medical professional come talk to us? We deal with infrastructure. The Denver Regional Council of Governments is actually one of the oldest councils of governments in the country. We actually were created back in about 1955. There was a lot of post-war kind of growth and development happening all over the region. And actually the mayor of Denver at the time, Mayor Quigley, convened a bunch of elected officials from around the region, Arapahoe County and Jefferson County and Adams County, and said, hey, there's some big issues affecting us that I think we would be better off dealing with together than sort of individually. And that was sort of the genesis for what became the Denver Regional Council of Governments. Today, we're a planning organization that deals with issues in transportation, and growth and development and aging and disability services for the region. We're a big region. Our territory covers 10 counties. So Boulder County, all of Douglas County, all of Jefferson County, a portion of Southwest Weld County in the northeast part of the region. And we actually extend all the way to the Continental Divide, up to the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnels. Clear Creek County and Gilpin County are both part of the Denver region. Although the part I'm going to talk about today are transportation services as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, for the region. Those rural parts of the region aren't included in our MPO function. So we work with Gilpin and Clear Creek County. We work with kind of eastern rural Arapahoe County and Adams counties, but they aren't technically part of our MPO boundary, where we have very specific federal roles and responsibilities. I've listed a couple of the key ones here. We really are responsible for coordinating with our 57 local government members, cities and counties and towns from throughout the region, as well as the Colorado Department of Transportation and RTD on the transportation planning process for the metropolitan area. So that's a federal designation. There are many MPOs throughout the country serving urban areas to coordinate that transportation planning function and think about our region's transportation needs and how we will address them. We do that through a long-range plan, the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, and then we actually allocate funds to specific projects and programs through the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, and that's what I'm going to spend most of the afternoon talking about today. I want to put this in a little bit of context for you. So one of the big regional plans that we adopt as a body is the Metrovision Plan, and that's really our region's shared vision for the future. The thematic goals for what we want to achieve, specific objectives and outcomes we're striving for, and different performance measures. So our other planning work really is designed to help support the achievement of the Metrovision Plan. As I said, one of the federally required products that we produce is the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, and that really lays out our long-term transportation needs and our goals and what we're trying to achieve through transportation in terms of our broader regional goals, and the specific projects and programs we actually think we can afford to implement over some period of time, usually 20 years, sometimes it's 30 years. And then we implement specific projects and programs through the TIP with specific dollars allocated to specific projects. So again, a little bit more of that planning context. There is that strong relationship between the TIP and the RTP. The investments we make through the TIP should be helping us collectively achieve the outcomes that we've identified in the Regional Transportation Plan. Under federal law and regulation, major projects have to be identified specifically in the RTP, or they can't receive funds and they can't be funded in the Transportation Improvement Program. So there's a big fixed guideway transit investment, like a bus rapid transit project or a light rail project. Those can't proceed until and unless they are included in the Regional Transportation Plan. Same thing for a new freeway interchange or widening an arterial facility and adding vehicle capacity. Those kinds of projects have to be included in the RTP, regardless of who pays for it, whether it's dollars that are allocated through DRCOG or dollars that are allocated through the City and County of Denver or the state of Colorado through CDOT or RTD. Or a developer for that matter. Those major projects have to be included in our regional plan in order to move forward into implementation. And that's especially true for the projects that we fund with the dollars that we allocate as an organization to specific projects to build towards that RTP. But that RTP includes the full spectrum of improvements around the region. The plan also includes a number of other sort of what we call programmatic investments in things like corridor transit improvements, arterial safety, and complete street retrofit projects, other bike and pedestrian sorts of projects, and projects that help us accommodate freight and goods movements and access around the region. So a lot of those projects are illustrated in the plan, but a specific project, as long as it's not one of those major projects, doesn't have to be specifically listed in the plan in order to be funded through the TIP. The regional transportation plan is like our signpost that guides us towards the future. We have 6 investment priorities identified in the plan, focusing on safety and improving our air quality, improving regional transit, making sure that we have a good, healthy, active transportation network throughout the region, safely and efficiently accommodating freight and goods movement around the region, and multimodal mobility around the region to help make sure that people can move around in all modes throughout the region. So the TIP is one of the principal ways that DRCOG invests money to help implement that plan over time. But it's not, but the money that DRCOG specifically allocates through its TIP process is a fraction of the total dollars that are invested in this region in transportation. So every city and county invests money in transportation improvements and maintaining and operating the system. CDOT spends a significant amount of money on investments in improving and maintaining and operating the system, and RTD spends a significant amount of money. So the money that we allocate is really geared towards assisting our local governments with implementing very specific projects that help us build towards implementing that regional plan and ultimately achieving the Metrovision goals and objectives. It is a short-term planning program with specific dollars that are funded through DRCOG. But again, if some of those big major projects, regardless of funding source, regardless of who's doing the project, also get incorporated in the TIP. But I'm going to focus on sort of our process for allocating the DRCOG directed funds. That funding, we generally go through a major TIP process about every 4 years. There are exceptions to that, and I'll get into that a little bit. We're in one of those exception periods now, but generally about every 4 years, we do a major, what we call a call for projects, where we solicit applications from our local government members and other eligible applicants to pursue funding for specific projects and programs to be included in the TIP and receive funding through DRCOG. We receive a number of different funding sources, mostly from the federal government in the form of block grant funds, congestion mitigation air quality, multimodal and mitigation option funds, that's a state program, a new carbon reduction program through the federal government, and transportation alternatives. Those are our principal sources of funds that we allocate. Each one of those funds has very specific eligible projects that they can be used for, specific criteria, and so we allocate them slightly differently. There are a handful of set-aside programs that we take off the top, and I'll talk about those. We do kind of more frequent calls for projects for those smaller set-aside programs that have very specific purposes. And then the adopted TIP, once each TIP is adopted, we adjust that often through modifications and amendments as circumstances change. Sometimes projects, the scope might change slightly, or a project sponsor may go and find additional money or bring more money to the table to expand the scope, and we'll amend the TIP to accommodate those. We start our process by having our board of directors adopt a policy to guide how we will develop the transportation improvement program. It really establishes the rules for the road, if you will, about how we will solicit projects, what the criteria will be used to evaluate project applications, how we will go about actually awarding funds to specific projects. Lays out all of the specific criteria and applications for those processes. So how do folks participate? Well, we have kind of a two-track system for how we allocate funds. We have a regional share where we divide our region up into county geographies, and each of those county geographies is allowed to apply for up to 3 projects. And these are meant to be larger, more significant sort of projects that we think will have more regional scale benefit. Those applications are reviewed by DRCOG and a review panel that has representatives from throughout the region, as well as some subject area experts. And we develop a recommendation to the DRCOG board to award funds. The subregional share gets about 80% of the funds, and those are for local applications within each of those county subregions. And those projects compete at the sub-regional level, not at the regional level. And those sub-regions review and discuss and prioritize and make a recommendation for a set of projects to be funded that ultimately get awarded by the DRCOG board. So the board holds the ultimate authority to award projects, but in this two-step process, 20% of the funds really are kind of compete regionally or allocated regionally, selected regionally. 80% of the funds are competing at the sub-regional level and are awarded by sub-region. I do want to say that public involvement and public engagement and comment is really important to both of these processes. And so once the application period closes and we have all of the applications in at either the regional process or the sub-regional process, we will post all of those applications. We have a comment map available on our website, and we will solicit comments from the public on all of the applications we received so that we have all of that information as we're evaluating the applications and making recommendations and decisions. I talked about those TIP set-aside programs. So we have adopted in this most recent TIP policy covering the years 2024 through 2027. These set-aside programs, and again, they have very specific kind of priorities and criteria: travel demand services, regional transportation operations, which is kind of maximizing the efficiency of our signal systems throughout the region. We have a specific air quality set aside that goes to the Regional Air Quality Council to promote programs that help improve our air quality in the region. We have a human service transportation set aside that is geared towards providing transportation to seniors and people with disabilities and other folks that are vulnerable and need different ways to get around the region. And then a community mobility planning and innovation program where we do more regional scale corridor planning, but also smaller scale community planning with more local communities to talk about new innovative ways to address transportation needs. All of these programs, with the exception of the air quality improvements set aside, have their own separate calls for projects. Those typically happen every year or every other year, but they're relatively small pots of money. So this will be about $63 million over that 4-year period. Our overall call for projects that I'm going to get into the details in next is allocating about almost $500 million of funding. So the set-asides are a kind of a fraction off the top, but this is where the real money gets allocated to projects. I mentioned though that regional share and sub-regional process, and just to make it even more complicated, we decided this cycle to sort of split our process up into 2 specific types of calls. Because we have some very specific dollars that have specific eligibilities, and because of our need and desire to focus on improving air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions for transportation, these first 2 calls for projects will really only focus on projects that improve air quality or improve the multimodal transportation system. So those are the only types of projects that are eligible for these first 2 calls. We are in the middle of that step 1, the regional share call for air quality and multimodal projects, funding for fiscal years 22 through 25. And then we will move into this fall, the sub-regional call for those more localized projects. And that'll run later this fall, but also will be competing for funding that's available from 22 through 25. And then starting late this winter, in September, we'll move into the next 2 calls for projects. And we again will have a pot of money that's only available for those air quality and multimodal projects. But then we'll bring in some of our more flexible funds, the Surface Transportation Block Grant funds that are eligible for a broader set of types of projects. But the result of this over these next 4 calls is about 2/3 of the funding that we have available is actually restricted to those air quality and multimodal types of projects. And only about 1/3 is even eligible to be spent on other types of projects, but our history is the vast majority of those projects will at least have some multimodal component or be a multimodal type of project. So that's the overall schedule we're faced with. Again, I talked about we're going to be programming nearly $500 million worth of funds that will span from fiscal year 22 through fiscal year 27. So it's not all in one year, but it is a significant amount of money, and it can help us move the needle on achieving our regional objectives about transportation and growth and development, air quality and safety. I mentioned that call one, we've got about a little over $40 million for the first regional share of air quality and multimodal projects only. The sub-regional process will allocate about $162 million. We set targets for each of the sub-regions. So the Denver sub-region's target for call two is a little over $39 million. That's the funding target. It's not a funding guarantee because, again, the DRCOG board makes the final allocations and awards, but that's a funding target that is available to the Denver subregion. Then we move into calls 3 and 4. Call 3 will be another $52 million available, again, competing regionally. And then call 4 for the Denver subregion will have a total available target of almost $51 million. But again, that's split between the broader eligibility that is about almost $27 million, and then the air quality multimodal projects of about $24 million. So like I mentioned, we adopt with our policy sort of a criteria by which we evaluate projects to see how they are helping contribute to our regional goals. We have 4 sections. Really, we're looking at the importance of the project in terms of solving or addressing a regional or a sub-regional issue and connecting to Metrovision. Safety, active transportation, air quality, multimodal mobility, freight transit, those are all really key priorities. So about half of the criteria relate to how the project will actually help us achieve those goals. How much outside funding is being brought to the table to help leverage the limited dollars that are allocated through DRCOG, and then how ready the project is to move forward. We don't want to allocate funds to projects that can't ultimately be delivered because there hasn't been enough prep work or enough project development work done. Because if a project ties up those funds for multiple years, that's money that could have been spent and used by another jurisdiction for another priority project. So just want to, I've got a couple more slides left and I'll wrap up, and I want to leave plenty of time for y'all to have some conversation and ask any questions. But generally, most of the dollars that we allocate, as I mentioned, are federal funds, and that can bring some challenges to it. So local governments tend to be fairly careful about the types of projects that they apply for federal funds for, because those projects can take longer and they can cost more. There's just additional federal regulations and requirements and state regulations and requirements that come along with utilizing those federal funds. And when DRCOG awards those funds to a project, we are funding a specific scope and schedule for a project. And if the project sponsor can't meet the schedule, they risk losing the money. And if the scope for the project changes or the costs increase for that project beyond what they originally estimated, we do not give that project sponsor more money. That project sponsor, like the city and county of Denver, has to come up with additional money to make those funds up and deliver that scope that we awarded. Cost overruns have to be made up with those other funds. These federal grants, we throw around the term grant pretty loosely. It's not exactly a grant, it's a reimbursable contract. So the local agency gets the bills from the contractor, they pay those bills, they submit an invoice to the state of Colorado, and the state of Colorado cuts them a check for that invoice minus whatever the required match is on that project. It is not a local project anymore. It's under federal supervision and state supervision. And then it's subject to all those state and federal statutes or regulations and guidelines around environmental clearances, project reviews, how the agency procures for materials and services, how they acquire right-of-way through a project, paying prevailing wages, and buying American goods and materials. So finally, it just, I think what we admonish all of our local governments when they're thinking about going after these funds is to make sure that they're reading the announcements carefully, being cognizant of the eligibility requirements, making sure that the local project is a good fit for the program, reviewing some previous project awards, and really, does the agency have the capacity to carry out the project, both the financial capacity and the staff capacity to carry out and manage one of these federally funded projects? And then, does the team have the time to write a competitive grant? A couple of those points aren't as relevant for a jurisdiction the size of Denver, but like I said, we've got 57 local jurisdictions around the region, and everyone is in different situations. And definitely folks should think about partners, both internal and external, that can be advocates or partners in these projects. And with that, I can wrap up and take any questions in the chat. After we're done, I'll put links to a couple of resources on our website. And then obviously any questions after this presentation, you can reach out to myself or one of our staff, Todd Cottrell, who oversees this program. With that, be happy to take any questions or thoughts that y'all have.
I see one from Alan.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, thank you so much for that presentation. Shed a lot of light on the process. Ron, how can we better understand as a group kind of what are the items on the list for that Denver is calling for, either in the 22-25 call or the 24-27 call, of what the specific things that are potentially coming down the pipeline?
Sure. So like I said, that very first call is now underway. The city and county of Denver, as one of our subregions, just like all of the other subregions, we require that there is a kind of policy-making body that manages that work for those subregions. And they have a committee that meets, that we post the agendas for those meetings on our website, and then each of the counties that oversees that work posts those agendas on their website. So City and County of Denver, I know, has a very active forum for those, and that's where they deliberate and think about what projects City and County of Denver might pursue for funding through our TIP process, either through that regional share process or then at the sub-regional process.
And I'm happy to, we can share as that list is developed and implemented, I'm happy to share that with this group as well, distribute that and have it as we go through this TIP process right here. A little bit different, Ron kind of touched on it, kind of a two-parter, but yeah, happy to share that information as we work on that.
Thanks, Nick. Is that something that we might be able to see before it's completely baked, once a little further upstream, or? Great, thank you so much. That would be outstanding.
Just don't tell anyone.
I did put a couple of links in the chat message, so you can. We have a TIP website that kind of goes through the entire process. You can track that during the process. There's tons of resources there, and then we also have what's called our TRIPS database, where you can go and search for any project that's already been funded, that's received funds, and there's details about those projects. So I give you access to both of those tools as you desire to go look at them.
We have Paul.
Hey, dumb question, but I have one for both Ron and for Jessica from earlier. Are we free to share the links to what you sent us on social media with our kind of connective base?
Absolutely. Yeah. The more review, the more comments we get, the better decisions we can make.
Awesome. Jessica, did you hear that as well? I know you're not.
Yeah, that was just a link to our website, so feel free to share that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, Jake, you want to go?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Ron, I know you mentioned one of the criteria is the regional impact, which obviously makes a lot of sense for DRCOG. I was curious though, it does, I can imagine a world in which the projects that are most likely to have regional impact may be more highway-like in nature. What kind of criteria allows like projects? because I believe Dottie applied for the Broadway bike lane. Like, what kind of criteria allows a project like that to potentially rise up, given that it may be a little harder for a project like that to really argue a regional impact, but on the project itself, but the nature of switching people's mode share is obviously a big regional impact. So I was curious what regional impact I guess means to Dr. Cog and how it's analyzed.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Appreciate that question, because first of all, a regional project that has regional impact is definitely not limited to just a highway project. As a matter of fact, we do very little highway widening in this region anymore. Really, our highway system is fairly mature, and we're finding different ways to move people around, and that's our focus. We are never going to be able to build our way out of congestion. We are focused on investments that can give folks good, safe, viable ways to move around the region to meet their daily and needs. And look, a lot of people drive for some of their trips, but the more we can give folks good, viable, safe options, the more we can sort of shift a little bit and have a pretty big impact on the region. So we've done things like develop a regional active transportation plan that has identified a regional network of regional bike and pedestrian paths all over this region. And investments in that infrastructure is very much consistent with our goal of building out a regional system, and therefore has a regional impact and is a regional project. It's more about scale than the type of project, right? So yeah, a local sidewalk project on a local sort of minor arterial street, probably not a regional scale project in the kind of the way we think about the regional share process. But again, that's only 20% of the funds that we allocate is for those projects. So we are looking for larger projects that invest in the regional system. It's the sub-regional share where there's more flexibility to do things that have a kind of smaller travel shed, if you will, and more of a local focus. But again, those types of investments that help us as a region achieve our regional goals. I hope that helps. I see Joe with a hand up.
Yeah, I had a question on things like really approve of what you're doing. Air quality. I mean, that can be a huge range. Do you have like guidelines for the counties to do, or what you're looking for, or you just let them come up with something? I mean, obviously the regional bike path would do that, but do you offer them any advice of what kind of direction you'd like them to go in?
Yeah, we do. And again, that's why we do create a regional transportation plan, is to set that regional framework, right? And these investments should meet local needs within the framework of our regional objectives. Those are the best projects for the regional tip. If it's purely a local priority and has little connection or little contribution towards our larger regional goals, then that's better funded at the local level. With the resources that we have available, we want to focus on those investments that align local priorities and local efforts to help us achieve our regional goals. But those projects that improve air quality are very much transit investments, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, some limited amount of sort of local operational kind of improvements that can have some air quality benefits, like addressing a specific bottleneck that doesn't really add capacity, but can address a recurring sort of bottleneck. So those are the types of projects we're really focused on in the air quality and multimodal calls. A vehicle capacity project is not eligible for the air quality and multimodal call.
And Ron, could you touch just real briefly, because it's the most complicated subject in the world, but on conformity and how that plays into how these projects are selected?
Oh boy, yeah. So we are classified as a non-attainment area for ozone by the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, and as a non-attainment area, anytime we adopt a plan and anytime we adopt a new tip, we have to demonstrate that that set of investments that were through the tip or the planned investments through the plan will help us achieve the air quality standards, the national air quality standards that are set by the federal government for us, for ozone precursors in particular for us. That's called conformity. That means the plan or the tip is conforming to those federal standards. And so we do that evaluation every time we adopt a new plan and every time we adopt one of these four-year tips to demonstrate that what we're investing in or what we plan to invest in is moving us towards and ultimately achieving those air quality standards. And we've been making, this probably won't ring very, very true for you, but we've been making really good progress in improving our ozone situation in this region. It doesn't feel like it sometimes because we get these ozone alert days and no level of ozone is particularly safe, but our ozone has been improving over time, but the federal standards have been going down faster. So the target we keep aiming for is moving, and we still have work to do. There's no doubt about it. And I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that we don't believe that there's more work to do, because there's a lot more work to do. But we're actually, on the ozone side, we're making the kind of progress we need to make. It's taking some time. We've got more to go. And now we've got a real climate crisis that we're also trying to address, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which isn't always the same strategies as addressing our ozone issue. Boy, Nick, thanks for sending me down that rabbit hole.
I think Eileen was first and then Jonathan. I could be wrong, I'm guessing.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, man, Ron, I got some questions about how these projects are funded. So you made a comment about projects that expand vehicle capacity not being funded and like widening roads. But a project that a lot of us in this group are really concerned about and have a lot of questions about is the I-25 and Broadway expansion, realignment. I don't remember the exact title, but what I do know is that a lot of funds are being dedicated and diverted to this project. And so I'm really trying to resolve what you said with what's going on in my head. How does a project like this receive funds? It's a huge cost. The main beneficiary of this realignment, this project, is the main beneficiary are drivers. And the project is so expensive, it diverts funds away from bike ped projects. And then even more so, this is like the nail in the coffin, it creates a more unsafe environment. The way I understand the project is being designed, it really inhibits the environment in that area for pedestrians. It's already really tough for pedestrians there. And I think it might create an even worse situation. So I'm just looking for funds and as many projects to get funded as possible that can help complete our bike ped network. And I really need some help understanding how a project like this receives so much funding.
If you're talking about the existing improvements at I-25 on Broadway,
the ones that are on their way. I'm pretty sure this project is well on its way to beginning soon. And I would just invite any other board members to, if you can explain the situation. We've talked a lot about this project as a group. So if I'm missing the mark a little bit on describing this, somebody please correct me.
Yeah, I probably won't get into specifics on any particular project, but I will say that, we're an extremely large region. We are at the crossroads of two interstate freeways, and there's not only a lot of people, but a lot of, hi little one, there's also a lot of freight that moves into and through our region. And so the infrastructure plays a really important role in both our quality of life and our economy, and safety. And we have to have a balanced transportation system, and our plans are aimed at trying to strike the right balance. So I didn't mean to say that we never invest in roadway capacity projects, because there are sometimes places where that needs to happen for safety or some other reason. But I'll tell you, this tip cycle where we're allocating $500 million, I think when you think that over two thirds of that money is off the table for those types of projects, that's a significant statement about where our priorities are. And then a third is only available for those types of projects, but typically probably less than half of that will actually be invested in vehicle capacity sorts of projects. And there are different needs in different parts of the region. And again, the funds that we allocate through this TIP process through DRCOG is only a piece of the money that gets invested in the transportation system. CDOT has a lot of money that they allocate specifically to projects that aren't competitive through this process, that they largely make the decisions on how to invest in their system. And cities and counties all throughout the region also make their own investments in transportation improvements. So that's at the high level how I would address that comment, Eileen.
And I put some, thank you, Ron. And I do think there is some misconception about the scope of this project. It is a complicated project, but put some additional information on there. And I would certainly offer, I feel like this has come up enough that a more detailed description or more detailed presentation at a future meeting would probably be appropriate in my opinion. But do want, if you guys could, so I put the link in there to the website and really goes into the different elements of it. It is primarily, in my mind, a safety project. It is redesigning the Wedge ramp to allow for better pedestrian and bicycle access to Broadway and I-25. It also helps facilitate kind of the development of that and the transit-oriented development. Now, I am not an expert on the details of this, but certainly would encourage folks to take a look at that link that I put in there. And yeah, if it interests the group, certainly would like to have the program manager come in and present to y'all on that.
Yeah, I think that would be good because my understanding is that it makes the distance to cross Broadway as a pedestrian, like, I think it's like 40 times longer, basically. Or sorry, 40%. 40 times would be impossible. Very important I clarify that one. But I mean, particularly when we talk about, for me, that might not be a big issue, but for people with different gaits and speeds of walking, it's just really, really concerning. I candidly am afraid to cross Broadway on foot, and I'm not afraid of much in the city. So I definitely would love to hear more about it because I do definitely have pedestrian concerns in that project.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Very informative. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to present this to all of us.
Very happy to have been here. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And with that being said, probably not going to have time for the odds and ends, so we can move on to the advisory board subcommittees.
Thanks, Raymond. I don't know if everyone got a chance to look at the rough draft I put together because I just sent it right before this meeting. If not, I can also share my screen real quick. At least I think I can. Oh yeah, okay, here we go. Michelle, I think I might need you to grant me access to do that.
You got it, I'm working on it.
Okay, but it's just, I put together a rough draft of kind of showing the 5 subcommittees we talked about last month, man.
You should be able to share now if you want. There you go.
Perfect. Do you guys see, what do you guys see? Because I don't know what I see. This screen.
We have the budget policy, community engagement, project deep dive and operation. That's up.
Yeah, we see the subcommittees. Yeah.
You do? Okay, cool. Awesome. Perfect. But this is just a rough draft I put together, kind of outlining what the subcommittees are. I think this is just, I really view this as kind of just like a quick starting point. And then once people kind of get into the subcommittees, if they want to add or change that description or feel like, hey, this overlaps with our subcommittee, I think that's something that each subcommittee would have the freedom to do. But I did want to present this to everyone now. And then I'm going to make it accessible to our shared drive too as well, so people can make comments on it or give additional thoughts. But just wanted to make this available to you guys and kind of get initial feedback on this. And if we don't have time, if people don't feel comfortable giving a comment on this because I gave it to you guys right before, I can also see that feedback once it's available in the drive. If there are no, Tangia, like you about to say something?
Yes, thanks, Antonio. I would be happy to comment. I do need a little bit more time to digest it, though.
That's cool. It's totally fine.
So once it's in the drive, I do have to make comments.
Cool.
Wondering if. Sorry about that. I've had internet issues today, so I was working on 2 devices. Wondering if sort of a move forward for this. It sounds like we are. Yeah, I also didn't get a link to this in my inbox. Sounds like we want to take a look at the descriptions. Immediate next step after. I guess what I'm wondering is, are we trying to revise? We have already in the last meeting we have already voted to move forward with these 5 areas, these 5 subcommittees initially. We voted on that and we passed that. So these will be the 5 subcommittees. Maybe a little bit more to figure out about what the intent of the committees is. But our next step was to figure out which subcommittee we would each like to be in. So I'm wondering if our immediate next step here is revised descriptions further at all, or if we can pretty much immediately move to me drafting up a voting form of an interest form, a subcommittee interest form, sharing right after this meeting, and having people rank their order of choices of preference for which one they would be in. I'm not sure that, I guess I'm wondering, do we need to revise descriptions before we do that? Or can we just say, hey, this is great, let's digest this afterwards, let's vote for which one we want to be in, and then the subcommittees can, shift their intent a little bit if they'd like to.
I think the latter makes sense. I think we could figure out where we want to be, and then once they're formed, then revise the descriptions.
I totally agree with both of you guys. If that's the case, then okay. We don't need to take a vote on it, right? Because we already voted on it last time. So I'll make this available and we can get that ranking system out there. It was brought to my attention, if there's no other comments on this, that we voted last meeting about the letter to the mayor. And so I just wanted to get some, Alan, would you mind provide some clarity on that?
Yes, I think we voted last week for our last meeting. At the very end, we voted on the committees. I don't think we got a chance to vote on the letter to the mayor, and I think you wanted to add that to the agenda this time just to take a quick vote since everyone had plenty of time to review it by now, Antonio.
Okay. If that, I put to the floor a motion to send the letter to the mayor moving forward after this meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
With that, can we get a aye from everyone else? If you agree, nay if you don't.
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay. That's it. For those two, no other comments for subcommittees? Cool. I'll turn the floor back over to you, Raymond.
Already had said. Do we have any odds and ends? Anything anybody else wants to discuss that wasn't on today's agenda?
Yeah, this is Julie, and this might just be because I'm new and don't understand the protocol, but we get this public comment that I found quite compelling. what happened, but we don't like ask them any questions or give them any feedback. Like, is there a feedback loop of like, what do we do with that information, and do we need to make it seems like there's things that someone needs to take action on. I don't know if that's us or someone else, but what's the, I know as someone who's often giving public comment, it's really frustrating when you give comment and you don't know if anyone is listening or what's going to happen.
Yeah. So when we do take public comments, I mean, we write them down. I mean, because we have a lot of things we have to pack a lot of stuff into, this 2-hour period. So we could bring it up to Michelle and, eventually get it in to one of our future meetings. That kind of answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm new, so whatever people think is best. I just don't want to like say thank you for sharing and then not have any sort of feedback loop. I just don't think that's respectful to our citizens.
Right, and then there is feedback, but like I said, we can't address everything in a 2-hour
I understand we can't do it
meeting.
at that second, but I just want to make sure that we're somehow doing something around that.
Yeah, we can also, I mean, who's speaking?
I
Jamie,
can jump in too.
Or yeah,
I know
Antonio,
in the past, we've kind of given some comments to Michelle. Since we've seen an increase in volume, no, we haven't done that lately. I'm actually hoping that this is something that the community engagement subcommittee can kind of talk about in terms of developing a process for us, because I agree with you, Julie, that we do want to have some kind of process to where people do give feedback, and then we're able to pass along and at least get an answer from Dodi on that. So I think right now the process is, especially when we have a day like today that's heavy right of way, we pose that question. If we pass along that question like, hey, Dodi, what can we get a little bit more information on what that right of way process is? I know last month they dove into what that is, 311. Kind of the comeback was that they were understaffed. There were multiple reports that were given, but still not the answer. So I think we're kind of in that in-between phase where as a board, we don't have a designated process. What I'm hoping is this subcommunity around community engagement can kind of solve that for us. So I hope that answers your question, but it's not the answer that we need. So.
And Antonio, on that specific item, Jake and I have had a little bit of a conversation going on. I'm meeting with some different folks about some of the ideas that have been presented around this and providing some clarity. So we will have follow-up on that specific item.
Thank you.
And Jamie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and until we get that subcommittee going, I know I had mentioned at the last meeting that we needed more information on the sidewalk right away. So Michelle told me that we would try to get this on the next agenda. I did share that in the chat. So the two main points would be 311 flexibility when it comes to identifying addresses. And the other one is just specific rules and policies so we can review it and provide feedback. As an advisory committee, I'm always disappointed at the end of a meeting if there's no action items. And I've been to 3 meetings and it doesn't seem like we're actually moving forward. So I hope we get that on the next agenda, if not the next one. But I kind of agree with Julie that I think the fastest way to get back to these comments is to jump on these subjects and give a recommendation. So just wanted to pass that along.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Jake, you had your hand up, sir.
Yeah, and in the meantime, while we don't have that committee, I am wondering, because the one about the air quality monitor definitely stuck in my head. And I don't know that we have any authority as a board to address that directly, but I would be happy if anyone wants to offline coordinate and try to see if there's anything we can do to look into that further. But I don't want that one to fall on deaf ears either. So I'm happy to, I guess, how about this? If anyone is interested, email me, and then I can take that as an action item if that works. But it sounds like that one might be before we get a process in place. But I don't think we have any legal authority, but it doesn't mean we can't look into it potentially.
And Jake, once you look into it, reach out to me and I'll see if we can't track down. It's hard to certainly respond immediately to individual kind of permit requests, stuff like that, but happy to help kind of navigate that once you guys get details on what's going on.
Cool. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks my
Nick.
teammate on all these.
Jonathan.
Hey, yeah, quick comment and sort of request for the group here. I would note that I'm really excited to get these subcommittees together because obviously with a board like ours, the only way we're going to start being able to take actions that this hearing is working offline. Like we won't be able to do a lot in meetings together. Most of the successful boards I've seen here have broken out subcommittees and had those subcommittees work offline separately and come back and give presentations to the larger group, have those discussions with city officials, citizens, others relevant to the progress separately. So I'm really looking forward to that. With that said, I do think we only have like a couple minutes here. I would love to talk about our next agendas. I don't think we have clear items for the next agenda. We've talked a bit about the right-of-way topic right now. I don't think we need another presentation. We just received a presentation about the policies and these. So I'm wondering if we should maybe leave some time next session for people to report on outcomes of their own research or own things that they've sort of had some of these side conversations about. Would also proffer from my perspective, I know we wanted to set a lot of our agenda timelines around budgetary cycles. We very much wanted to make sure that we knew the DRCOG project request cycle at a time that we and citizens listening could impact it. We also wanted to make sure we were well aware of how capital projects and operational projects planning was coming before the next Denver City Council budget cycle. So I don't know if we're there yet. I think that'd be a question for Nick and others on the line. Do we need to make sure our next, we're in spring, and I heard that was spring previously. So do we need to make sure our next two agendas are pretty full with budget stuff, or just like as a group, should we start breaking out into, I guess, our separate subcommittees and more start reporting back another time or two from now?
I would recommend that our next agenda, like you said, gets heavy on budget here. Earl Jackson, our CFO that I think was introduced to you last time, he and I and Zach have been visiting on kind of how we want to take the next steps with this, because very much recognize that, yes, we have to strike a balance here between between public information and things that aren't public yet on there. But I would encourage, I think the budget season is starting to warm up, March, April, kind of the traditional opening of that. So yeah, we stand ready to engage at a deeper level on the budget.
For the, I know either January or February, we set aside March as DRCOG meeting and then April as the dive into the next fiscal year budget. Are you guys ready for that type of meeting? Or, yeah, okay. So that's the only agenda item we've had kind of set for April, is a huge chunk of time dedicated to the next fiscal year budget.
Wondering, should we just leave it at that then and just say like we're going to have budget and then we're going to leave a little bit more odds and ends of discussion time so we don't run over?
Yeah, budget's worthy of it.
I agree with that budget on it.
Really quick, Earl Jackson here. I would also encourage maybe if there's anything from a subcommittee budget related sort of discussion that would need to happen, maybe that can move in tandem with just our discussion of the budget for the next monthly meeting, just to make sure that timing is a little bit more productive, and because it's a lot of elements that go into that, and so we want to make sure that we provide you guys with what you need in order to be informed as you can.
Sounds good. Anybody else have anything to add before we adjourn? Nope. All righty. Well, thank everybody for your time. All of our speakers and our public commenters. We greatly appreciate it. Hope everybody has a good rest of their March, and we'll see you guys next month.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.